My family wants me to forgive the monster who abused me as a child. After I broke down, crying, I don't want to be part of a family with that bastard. My mom begged for a Christmas reunion. But how can I move on when the past haunts me? Before I 24 male explain the situation, I need to provide some background information. I had a challenging life growing up poor with a single mother, a brother, and a grandmother. She worked hard for us, often putting in overtime to cover Christmas expenses. She ensured we were okay whenever she could, and my grandmother supported us when she couldn't. My mother married my stepfather in 2010, who assumed the role of the man of the household and was the type of person who would say, "Listen to me or else." He was very verbally abusive but never laid a hand on my brother and me because my mother would not tolerate that behavior. He had 3 children from a previous relationship, so merging our families into a total of 7 was very difficult. I struggled with low self-esteem due to my weight and was bullied for it frequently. My stepfather made me exercise for an hour every day, and whenever I made a mistake, he would become furious and yell at me, sometimes for over 2 hours. The 2 older step-siblings and my brother moved out at 18 because of him, so around 2014, it was just me 14 and my stepbrother Craig 17. I am using fake names because I do not know if anyone in my family uses Reddit, and I do not want to imagine his real name. We grew closer, and one night he wanted to experiment with some things and bribed me to feel more comfortable with it. This is the reason for the content warning. After it happened, my parents noticed I had some extra cash, which led us to lie about what took place because I didn't want to get in trouble, and that despicable person wanted to evade responsibility. Fast forward to Craig moving out a year later with me just finishing the remainder of high school. At my first job, when I was around 17, I weighed 175 pounds. This seemed like a reasonable weight, but I was also 6 feet 3 inches tall, so I appeared very thin except for my stomach, which had a small muffin top because I had been overweight for most of my life. I developed anorexia due to how harsh my stepfather was about my weight, and I looked terrible throughout the time I struggled with it. After I graduated, my stepfather gave me a choice: go to college or join the workforce. Since I was a straight-A student, college seemed to be the better option. I had earned a scholarship that covered half of my tuition for 4 years, and I would pay the rest along with an esports scholarship. Since I was quite skilled at Overwatch, I now despise Blizzard and hero shooters for the reasons that follow. To obtain the additional funds I needed, I turned to loans, and while my mother attempted to help me, her credit was too low, so we sought assistance from my stepfather, who had better credit. He denied my request, stating I needed to handle this on my own. I asked aunts and uncles for help, but they all refused. Unable to attend college, I wound up working in a factory. It may seem like I am rambling, but all of this is relevant to the overall situation. I worked alongside my mother, saving enough money to buy a car, and eventually moved out after I accumulated sufficient savings. After moving out in 2019, I began dating my first girlfriend. Let's call her Sam. Sam and I were very close initially, but after she learned about my past, she became upset with me for still communicating with my family. This was when I disclosed to them that I had been sexually assaulted, which devastated my mother. She cried about how I had been afraid to come forward, and my stepfather was angered with his own child. It genuinely made me happy to see that they cared. This still troubles me when I reflect on it. However, things began to deteriorate between Sam and me, culminating in a significant argument. Context: my grandmother nearly passed away from a surgery. When she emerged unscathed, I was still worried for her. Sam questioned why I was still crying about it, saying she was fine and I should just move on. I responded by asking her to leave. We broke up a week later. I suffered 5 head injuries while working at my mother's factory, leading to my termination and subsequently bouncing from job to job until I secured an IT support position in 2023. Interestingly, I ended up with her ex-best friend. Let's call her Delilah. Delilah facilitated our connection but felt terrible about how she had previously treated me. We began to grow closer, and she ended her relationship with her ex because he was emotionally unavailable. Delilah and I have now been together for over 5 years. I have more trauma-related experiences, but they do not pertain directly to the story, so here is the situation. After revealing to my mother and stepfather about my sexual assault experience, I discovered from my grandmother that she had also been sexually assaulted by her brother when she was young, and my mother had been assaulted by her uncle during her youth. I felt terrible and grew closer to my mother and grandmother because it appeared to be a generational issue within our family. Sadly, this becomes significant later in a troubling way. In 2022, I was planning to attend the family Christmas gathering, and when I arrived, I saw Craig, my stepbrother, and my sexual assailant. I was shocked to see Craig there, as I thought my family was upset with him. I kept a pocket knife in my hand whenever he approached and privately asked my mother what was happening. She explained that Craig had started a family with someone else and had a child, so he showed my stepfather that he was trying to improve himself. My stepfather invited him, and although my mother felt uncomfortable, she was okay with the decision. Hearing that made me feel nauseated, so I left shortly after. That vile man even attempted to speak with me without acknowledging what transpired. Throughout 2023, I began distancing myself from my family, only to find out they had been in communication with Craig about his family and were helping him whenever they could. I discussed this matter with my older biological brother, let's call him Josh, and his behavior became somewhat indecisive. Eventually, Josh received a text from Craig. I became furious and shouted, "Why are you communicating with Craig? You know what he did to me, Josh." Josh replied, "I'm just talking to him because his daughter was selling some bracelets she made and I wanted to help. I discussed it with him when I visited mom and the stepfather and he was there too." I sighed, wanting only to leave. Concerned, Josh responded, "Why are you upset? I'm just trying to help his 6-year-old daughter." I retorted, "It's not about the child, it's about that despicable father that I am furious with." I departed after exchanging a few more words. I sought therapy to address the trauma and family issues, and my therapist recommended that I should cut them off due to the circumstances. In 2023, I did not attend any family functions, including Thanksgiving 2024. My mother grew increasingly worried about me, so she came to my apartment at the beginning of December to talk. I wished Delilah were home, but she was at work. We sat down and I finally expressed my frustrations regarding my stepfather and my battle with anorexia. For your information, I have been working on this and haven't forced myself to vomit for 4 years. We talked and she inquired whether my absence was due to my stepfather's presence, and I replied no. Then we finally discussed Craig. She asked if I could forgive Craig and I replied that I probably never would. I clearly stated that if Craig were going to be present, I would not attend. My mother informed me that my stepfather invited Craig, leading me to lose my composure. I was in tears asking, "Why don't you tell him not to invite him? You both know what happened. Why don't you defend me?" She began to cry as well, expressing her desire for me to be there for the family. I cried harder, insisting, "I do not want to be part of a family with that bastard." We ended the conversation with me telling my mother not to contact me unless it's an emergency or a death. She understood and left. I later spoke with my grandmother about the situation, and she expressed her desire for us to reconcile. I felt hurt and utterly destroyed because she and my mother had experienced similar situations. My grandmother and mother moved on and forgave the people who had harmed them. She asked if I was in a position to move on, and my answer was no. My grandmother expressed her hope to see my mother and me reconcile before she eventually passes away. My grandmother is 75. Unsure of what to do, I spent some time with her before leaving. Since then, I have been depressed and distant due to the pressure from my family to overlook the past and simply move on. I cannot, as I am too damaged from everything. Delilah understands and fully supports me, wanting me to get closer to her family, but I am unsure of how to feel about family connections anymore. To summarize, I was molested by my stepbrother. Years later, he established a family, and now my parents invite him to family gatherings. I no longer attend, and my family wants me to forgive him or move on. A significant argument ensued, and I am not currently communicating with them. Edit, I have not been on Reddit today because my sister, I refer to her that way, she has been a close friend since high school, came over. I read everyone's comments and feel very supported and appreciated. I plan to be open with my grandmother the next time I see her, probably around May, because we share a birthday and we usually have lunch together to celebrate. I know it will be emotionally challenging, but I must set the record straight. Thank you, everyone. Story 2. Fresh out of school, I was ready to make my mark in law, but just weeks in, I faced hostility from coworkers and a supervisor who screamed, "I won't believe your lies." After being fired without warning, I lost my confidence and developed severe stress issues. How did things turn so dark? I created this account solely to discuss my experience. It occurred from September to December, but I am still hurting and have been contemplating posting this since January. It is going to be a lengthy account, so here is the summary. Summary. My coworkers became hostile, ignored me, and spread falsehoods about me. My supervisor unjustly accused me of inappropriate conduct and yelled at me until I cried. I was consistently belittled, given conflicting instructions, and ultimately terminated without notice. I lost several months of training and developed significant stress-related issues. 3 months later, I am still grappling with the emotional aftermath. Background. In my country, there is a type of education that combines full-time work with lower pay in exchange for training and schooling. After 2 or 3 years, you earn a certificate demonstrating that you have successfully learned the job. Immediately after finishing school, I aimed to work in law. I applied for a trainee position at the first firm I encountered, received an interview right away, and was hired on the spot to commence in September. During the first 2 weeks, I truly enjoyed the job. My coworkers appeared nice, I found the learning process stimulating, and I felt genuinely happy and motivated. Then circumstances shifted. I cannot pinpoint exactly when or why. My coworkers became curt with me, began ignoring me, and expressed annoyance when I was not fast enough, even though I was only 3 weeks into training. I was assigned tedious tasks such as copying and scanning documents for hours. When I completed a task and inquired about a new one which I was required to do, people visibly expressed irritation as if I were a burden. My motivation began to wane. Additionally, my coworkers exhibited varying degrees of support. 2 or 3 were kind and supportive from beginning to end, the remainder not so much. I shared an office space with 4 women who spent hours discussing their children, grandchildren, dogs, Halloween decorations, weddings, and so forth. They excluded me when I attempted to join conversations, spoke negatively about me even when I was present, and continually provided me with conflicting instructions. For instance, if you have questions, ask. Why would you ask that? Just look it up in the book. Why are you reading that book again? Just ask if you have a question. One day, a coworker was reading a message aloud regarding contributing money for the trainees, which included me. She paused, glanced in my direction, then deliberately ceased reading. Instead, she whispered to her neighbor and began ranting about how she could not afford trivial expenses like that and how they must regard her as foolish for almost 15 minutes. On another occasion, I was unexpectedly summoned to the office and confronted with accusations of being on my phone constantly. I had used it perhaps 3 times in 3 weeks, only while waiting for a 90-page print job. Being lazy and unmotivated. Being disrespectful. Not expressing enough gratitude for the opportunity. Not accepting criticism well. Meanwhile, my coworkers spent at least an hour each day on their phones. When I made mistakes, my response was consistently, "Oh, I apologize, I must have overlooked that. I will correct it and take note for future reference." Yet I was seen as the issue. One day, I needed to send an email but mistakenly omitted the attachment and used the wrong signature. When I started, I was instructed never to alter the signature since my supervisor held ultimate responsibility. Consequently, I followed that rule. I recognized my error and swiftly began composing a follow-up email to apologize for my mistake. Before sending it, I sought feedback from 2 coworkers. Coworker 1, I would not write it that way, but I am unsure how to change it. I suppose it is acceptable. Me, are you certain I can modify it? Coworker 1, yes, it is fine, send it. Me, coworker 2, could you also take a look at it? Coworker 2, if she believes it is fine, then it is fine. That afternoon, my supervisor reprimanded me severely. She accused me of disregarding my coworkers' instructions and claimed they had advised me against sending it, asserting that I resisted their directions. Then she yelled at me until I cried. When I attempted to clarify what had transpired, she replied, "I do not care about your lies, I will not believe them." From that moment on, I recorded nearly everything that was said to me. I documented everything as evidence for my superiors should the situation escalate. However, conditions continued to deteriorate. I was no longer receiving any training. I was relegated to performing meaningless tasks. Most coworkers outright refused to acknowledge me, some harassed me, treated me poorly during all daily interactions, told me I was a bad person, and constantly made me feel like a mistake. I spent my breaks alone rather than in the lunchroom, and cried almost every day when my boyfriend picked me up, because people found something new to criticize me about. Afterward, my supervisor accused me of making derogatory remarks about my colleagues. When I inquired about what I supposedly said, she declined to specify. The next morning, I arrived at the office and addressed everyone. I was informed that I said something that hurt you. I do not know what it was, but I want you to understand that I did not mean it, and I am genuinely sorry. Surprisingly, afterward, they assured me that it was okay and began treating me better, but it lasted for merely one day. In November, I was informed that there would be a quarterly review with my supervisors to discuss my progress. During the meeting, I actively requested a contract that would allow me to continue my training there until I could transfer, so I would not lose any training time. Instead of agreeing to my request, my supervisors reacted with shock, questioning, "Why would you want to leave?" which sparked a significant debate between my supervisor and me. For example, my supervisor claimed I refused to speak with her. When I defended myself and stated that I had contributed to discussions, she corrected me and, in so doing, actually validated my point. Their final decision was, "We will try again for 2 weeks and reassess." So I put forth my best effort. I worked as diligently as I could. I also invested more energy into a mandatory Christmas project I had been working on for months, writing personalized poems for each coworker. Then the day of the next meeting arrived. When I entered that morning, they terminated my employment immediately. Please exit the offices and the building at your earliest convenience. I was also prohibited from attending the Christmas party. Given that my training required me to find another firm quickly, I submitted applications to other places immediately, the same day I was fired, within 2 hours. Two law firms didn't have any availability in December but advised me to reach out in January. In January, one of them, who had previously stated they were actively seeking trainees, suddenly declined, indicating that they had no available positions. Months later, I spoke to one of the kind coworkers. She informed me, "Someone was out to undermine you." When I mentioned the rejections, she implied that they were not entirely legitimate. The consequences. Not only did I lose my training and job, but I also lost 4 months of progress. Developed a mild burnout, according to my doctor, with extremely elevated cortisol levels due to stress. Experienced severe sleep disturbances, nightmares, and hours spent overanalyzing my mistakes. Cultivated an intense fear of making errors, causing hesitancy in everything I do. I began therapy to cope with it. 3 months later, I am still struggling. The conclusion. This job was meant to be my stepping stone. Instead, it shattered my confidence, concluded my training, and led me to question my self-worth. I have documented all my interactions, and honestly, I simply want to share my story. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask, as discussing it genuinely helps me cope. Story 3. Fell for my coworker while grieving my sister. I ignored the red flags, but when I confronted her about our emotional affair, she said, "I hate how guy friends fall in love with me." I walked away, but now I see cheating everywhere. Did I make the right choice? TLDR, I noticed my friendship with a coworker was becoming an emotional affair, so I addressed it. She denied it, and I walked away even though I had fallen in love. Then I started seeing signs of infidelity everywhere, while being gaslit and questioning if I was perceiving things accurately or simply becoming jaded. Healthy lessons were learned. I am a 27-year-old male, and I met a 27-year-old female at work. We connected well, although I was aware she had a boyfriend who is a 35-year-old male working toward becoming a doctor. I have many friends who are females because I mostly work with women, so I did not think much about befriending her. However, over the last 2 to 3 years, I had made significant personal progress and began receiving more attention from women around this time as well. I obtained her phone number and met with her boyfriend to inquire about joining the military. Afterward, she started texting me almost daily to chat or hang out. That year was particularly dark for me as I had just lost my sister to suicide, and this girl was supportive in ways that some of my other friends were not. She even prepared meals for me twice after noticing that I was snacking at work because I had not cooked for myself before my shifts. She exhibited all the warning signs: a father who was a serial cheater and absent financial dependency on boyfriends, a history of infidelity, past relationships that were unhealthy, a promiscuous history, and a victim mentality. The classic story of broken women. We spent a lot of time together one-on-one, and I felt that we shared a strong connection with many common interests. However, I am embarrassed to admit that many of our hangouts were quite flirtatious. After about 3 months, I visited her and her boyfriend's house to work on a furniture project, which was complicated by the fact that her brother had just moved in. I was unaware until I arrived that her boyfriend was out of state for a doctor's convention. We got food and settled in to watch television, which is where things escalated too far. It was cold, so we grabbed blankets and her legs ended up resting on mine. At that moment, I sensed that she wanted me to make a move. I paused and realized that we were crossing a significant boundary. I attempted to diffuse the tension and soon left, fully aware of the troubling situation we had created. While I won't deny that my flirting contributed to the problem, I believed that flirting with friends who are females was generally not taken seriously. At least that was my perspective at the time. The following day at work, I sought advice from another female friend, admitting that I had messed up and inviting her to join me and the other coworker to get her opinion. I thought that if I avoided one-on-one interactions, we could be more appropriate. Unfortunately, this was not the case. Although we started hanging out only in groups, my other female friends began to notice the situation. She even confided in me about problems in her relationship, but I deflected by inquiring about her boyfriend, questioning why he never spent time with us and what challenges he had faced. This girl quickly realized that I was distancing myself. I knew I needed to step away, but I only recognized too late that I had fallen in love for the first time. One day, a friend informed me that this girl remarked how she hates that her male friends fall in love with her and that she is not flirty at all. Hearing this upset me not primarily because she did not want me, but because she lacked awareness and accountability, instead adopting a victim mentality. I began to ignore her, but she quickly caught on, and I confronted her, stating that our friendship had not been appropriate and it needed to be addressed. She denied the existence of an emotional affair and claimed her boyfriend knew about that night on the couch and merely advised her to be careful, without considering it a significant issue. I confessed that I had fallen in love and compelled her to acknowledge what she was receiving from me that she was lacking in her relationship, to which she admitted it was emotional support. She expressed a desire to remain friends, but I grew frustrated, arguing that continuing our friendship would be disrespectful to both myself and her boyfriend. I ignored her for months following this conversation because I felt used and disillusioned by her claims, which appeared to lack accountability. However, before I left for basic combat training, I spoke with her one last time. I told her that although I still loved her, I could never accept cheating or monkey branching. I wanted both of us to take accountability for the emotional affair we had inadvertently built. I sought an honest conversation about how we had breached boundaries and affirmed that my decision to walk away was the correct one. She continued to deny any wrongdoing, insisting that she had no feelings for me and that the events of that night were insignificant and not boundary-breaking since her boyfriend allegedly knew and did not care. I stood my ground, asserting that it was a big deal, that all the flirting was inappropriate, and that I did not truly believe her boyfriend was aware of the situation. I explained that even if he did know, it might indicate worse issues regarding poor boundaries or naivete on both their parts. She offered to let me speak with him, but honestly I declined, not out of guilt, but because I could tell that this girl was financially dependent on him and I did not want to see her hurt. I conveyed that it did not matter whether she was lying or telling the truth, as it suggested either her boyfriend did not love her enough to care or she did not love her boyfriend, given her willingness to engage in an obvious emotional affair without acknowledging it. I asked her if she genuinely believed she was making the right choice in being with him. She responded affirmatively and said she was happy. I told her I believed she was compromising her own well-being for money and was heading down the wrong path. I expressed that due to her inability to take accountability, I could never accept her back into my life, and I subsequently blocked her on all platforms. This experience really affected me, not going to lie. I understand that some may say I got what I deserved, and they would not be wrong, but I can genuinely attribute this situation to carelessness on my part. Whether you believe me or not is subjective, but that same year, I also encountered many other instances of infidelity and broken boundaries, and I believe I addressed them correctly. When I asked for a girl's contact information, she told me she had a boyfriend but wanted to provide me with her Instagram. This occurred after significant flirting, such as her hand resting on my leg. I took back my phone and declined, stating that it did not seem right and that her boyfriend was a lucky man, though I didn't genuinely believe that. A female friend of mine with a boyfriend who did not attend a dinner told me, "You will be my boyfriend's name for the evening." I directly responded, "Do not say that, it is inappropriate." I battled with a girl during basic combat training only to discover she was engaged. I told her I found out she was unfaithful, that it was unacceptable, and said goodbye. Additionally, the military is rife with infidelity. The lesson I learned is that if you're attracted to someone who is broken, you are likely broken yourself, and you will probably end up hurting each other unless you acknowledge that you need to heal first. The main girl involved in this ordeal has since gotten engaged to that guy, and as someone who fell in love with her, it hit hard to realize she is truly abandoning herself by marrying for financial security. She would not have cheated or engaged in an emotional affair if she truly loved him, and if he loved her, he would have recognized the warning signs or cared enough to invest time in her. While I know I should despise her for what she did, I cannot help but still care for her, though I will never love her again or allow her back into my life. Ultimately, I want to seek people's opinions and express my experience. Do you believe she was right or wrong? Do you think she is genuinely happy with him or heading toward an unhappy life? Do you think she truly had no feelings for me, or was she lying, hoping to shift the blame onto me for falling in love? I have become quite pessimistic about women's infidelity these days. I have achieved success in many aspects of life, which has led to greater success in dating. However, I have only realized that contemporary dating feels toxic and unsettling. I have been attending therapy to address my flaws and have been learning how to establish and choose healthier relationships, so with some luck I will find the right partner. The final lesson I learned is that men really need to step up, myself included, as we are the leaders who should aim to be better men, husbands, and fathers to ensure we cultivate a healthier society and raise better children, thus preventing the emergence of broken, unhealthy individuals. I reject the influences of feminism that poison young women's minds and the red pill ideology that adversely affects young men's minds. I also study and work in psychology. So I assure you that healthy relationships cannot be founded on either of those extreme ideologies. If you wish to learn how to develop healthy relationships, I recommend looking up Sadia Khan. Much of her guidance is psychologically sound and statistically grounded in building healthy relationships. Story 4. My 6-month pregnant girlfriend overdosed and I thought I'd lost her. I can't remember what I took, she slurred before collapsing. Despite my efforts to get clean and keep us away from drugs her addiction won. Can a broken love survive this chaos? My girlfriend is 6 months pregnant. She overdosed last night and I found her. She survived, but it has really freaked me out. She appeared lifeless. I cannot unsee it. I have never witnessed an overdose before. She is angry with me because I left her a few months ago to get clean. I too am an addict. I was not an addict until I met her, but I take responsibility for becoming this way. I only used for 2 years, but it has nearly ruined my entire life. I have been arrested twice, dropped out of college, been kicked off a college sports team, and hurt many people and relationships. After my second arrest, I was sentenced to rehabilitation, but I reconnected with her as soon as I was released and began using again almost immediately. I am 22 years old and have already been arrested twice and gone through rehabilitation twice. She discovered she was pregnant about 4 months ago while we were both still using drugs. I remember my initial thought being that we needed to stop using immediately, but instead I chose to use even more drugs to try to forget about the entire situation and what I should really be doing. She stated that she was going to get an abortion. I was unsure how I felt about it. I am not against abortion, but I understood why she felt she had to get one, and that troubled me more. She needed to get an abortion because we were, and still are, addicts who should not have a child. This reality depressed me so much that I resorted to using more drugs, as addicts typically find any excuse to use. I spent about 2 weeks gathering money for the abortion. Where we live, you have to attend 2 appointments to obtain an abortion. The first appointment involves an ultrasound, and then there is a waiting period before you can return to actually have the abortion. She mentioned that she was going to the first appointment but did not want me to accompany her. She feared that if I were there to see our baby on the screen, she might decide not to go through with it. I left the apartment before her scheduled appointment. I returned when she was supposed to be at the appointment. Instead, she was at home, having used the abortion money to buy drugs. She began saying that she could not go through with the abortion, that it was our baby and she could not kill our baby. At that moment, I thought it was a really bad idea, but also felt that I was so in love with her and wanted to have this baby too. I was under the influence. We decided that the next morning we would start using less. We would be responsible. However, we were then evicted from her apartment due to being several months late on rent. I guess it was technically our apartment at that point, but it was really hers, and I moved in after dropping out of school. What followed were 2 weeks of crashing with anyone who could take us in, and during those 2 weeks, I realized I could not continue living like that. I was able to think clearly enough to understand that we could not have a baby and continue living this way. I went home to my parents and told them she was pregnant. God bless my parents, as they immediately took me in that night and helped me through days of withdrawal, literally cleaning up after me and staying with me 24/7 even after I said some really hurtful things when they wouldn't let me leave, as I decided I would rather not endure the agony of withdrawal any longer. They got me into rehabilitation out of state, and I was actually willing to go. When I left rehabilitation after 30 days, I returned to my parents' house. I have not been out for even a month. I tried to persuade my girlfriend to seek help. She often says she will do so tomorrow or next week or whenever. She never does. She felt hurt that I left her to return to my parents. I cannot live with her right now. I know that I am not in a position to remain clean if I am around her and the drugs. I do not want to live that way anymore. When I am clean, it is truly embarrassing to think about my behavior when I am using. It is humiliating to recall everything I have lost due to my addiction. Now, I am going to have a child who is born a drug addict as well, and it does not get much worse than that. She was on a maintenance medication. It is doctor prescribed and is the standard treatment option during pregnancy. Withdrawal is dangerous for the baby, so they use this medication, which does not get you high but will prevent withdrawal. She wanted us to find a place and move in together again, but I told her I am not ready for that. I just started a job. I suggested that perhaps after the baby is born, it could live with me and my parents while she truly cleans up her life. She stopped talking to me for several days after that. Eventually, she began texting me, expressing her strong desire to use drugs again. She had been texting me all day long. The things she was saying felt like cries for help. She mentioned that she had taken some pills and had stopped taking the prescribed maintenance medication. She wanted me to come over and use drugs with her. I decided to ignore her. I did not know what to do. I did not have the urge to use. The thought of getting high did not appeal to me at that moment. I was just more frustrated with her than anything. Perhaps it was selfish, but I felt like she was trying to sabotage my recovery. She called me late at night and I answered because I started to feel guilty for not taking her more seriously earlier in the day. She sounded more drunk than high. Her voice was very slurred, so I knew she was not lying about taking something. She said she did not feel well and could hear her heartbeat in her ears. It did not sound like how she usually sounds when high. She said she could not remember what she had taken. I told her to stop taking anything else and that I was on my way. She hung up on me and would not answer when I tried calling back multiple times. I arrived and I genuinely thought she was dead, but once I got over to her and touched her, I realized she was breathing very shallowly. Her lips were gray. I called 911 and fortunately she started to come to and respond a little before the paramedics arrived, but they had to administer naloxone. When I was actively using drugs, I had naloxone, but I did not have it this time. She could have easily died. She was taken to the hospital and she is okay. As far as they can tell, the baby is also fine. An overdose and the naloxone can cause miscarriage, or perhaps at this stage it could lead to stillbirth. This sounds terrible, but I felt slightly disappointed when they said everything seemed fine. I do not want anything bad to happen to the baby, but on the flip side, I believe we are the problem that will harm the baby. It is not a good situation to bring a child into. The thing is, I still love her very much. I cannot shake that feeling. It seems harder to eliminate than the constant urge to get high. However, I do not understand how I can reach the point of realizing something must change if we are having a baby, and I want that change to happen. I want to be healthy again. I do not want to be this loser. I seriously had every opportunity, every advantage, and threw it all away. I have no sob story or excuse for why I started using drugs. I had a good life, a normal family, and so much privilege. I was just foolish. I am not even the one carrying the baby, yet she does not seem to care or take getting clean seriously at all, even though she desperately wants this baby. I just do not know what I am supposed to do. As much as I love her, I wish I could go back 2 years and never have met her.